You can make a compelling argument that Rita Days has done just about everything. She's served on the Normandy School Board, has been a member of the Missouri House and Senate, and been a key member of county government. And now she's returning to elected office by serving as a member of the St. Louis County Council. The Bel Nor Democrat joins us next on the latest edition of Politically Speaking, so let's hit the music.
This is Politically Speaking, the longest-running episodic podcast about Missouri politics.
It's a little complicated in Bolivar because there is a Parsons family there.
But we also knew that it was important to make sure that we got to where we needed to go.
You know, if you walk in a room and you're getting ready to make a decision and everybody in the room looks like you need to stop.
And right now what happens in the United States Senate is as critical as anywhere else in the country.
I really want the state to succeed.
Well, we want everybody to know that we're all working together.
I just worked hard to try to build my name where I didn't have the money.
And welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm your host, Jason Rosenbaum, a political correspondent with St. Louis Public Radio. Joining me is my co-host,
Julie O'Donoghue.
And former state senator, former state representative, former Democratic director for the St. Louis County Board of Elections, former Normandy School Board member, and St. Louis County Councilwoman-elect.
Wow.
We have as our also a native of Northern Louisiana.
Minden, Louisiana, absolutely.
And
right.
Your name is, by the way?
My name is Rita Days.
I told the senator before the show that this may devolve into wonky nostalgia because I covered Senator Days when she was in the state Senate when I was 22 years old.
Wow, can you believe that?
And time flows by quickly. But we're going to talk a little bit about your political past, but also your near political future. You were elected to fill out the rest of Hazel Erby's term for the first county council district.
That's correct.
It takes in what, like 22, 25 municipalities?
It's 41 municipalities.
Oh
my. So, interestingly enough, it is much like my Senate district. When I was in the Missouri Senate, I had about 41 municipalities in there as well.
So it's just like old times.
It's just like old times.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. I mentioned that you were a native of Northern Louisiana. How did you get from there to serving in the Missouri House, the Missouri Senate, and soon the County Council?
It's a very interesting journey. A lot of people said, "No, how did you do that?" And I had a music teacher in Webster High School. It was Webster High School, and everybody here wants to know, what's your high school? And I say Webster. Oh, you went to Webster Groves? No, I did not go to Webster Groves. But I went to Webster High School in Minden, Louisiana, and she was actually a graduate of Lincoln University. And I didn't know that at the time, as she was my choral music teacher. And I indicated an interest in music, and she said, well, if you want to do music, you need to go to Lincoln. Dr. O. Anderson Fuller was the first African-American PhD in the country to get his degree, and he worked at Lincoln. He was actually the head of the department. So I, much to my parents' chagrin, I journeyed to Jefferson City, Missouri, and started Lincoln University. I really enjoyed the experience. It was one of the first times probably that I had been in an interracial environment in Minden. It was very segregated. I attended all segregated schools from first grade through high school. And so coming to Lincoln was truly a different experience for me, specifically regarding race relations. But it was a wonderful, and I was in music, so therefore the colors didn't matter. If you could sing, you could sing. It didn't make a difference. If you could play an instrument, you could play an instrument.
Can you play an instrument?
So I sing. My major was voice.
It would have been nice if you could bust out the bass guitar and do the bass solo for The Chain by Fleetwood Mac. But
no. It would have to be sung. So, but anyway, that got me to Missouri, and I got married and had a family, and really was a stay-at-home mom until I guess my daughter went to kindergarten, and I got a job at the university part-time while she was in kindergarten, and I would go to the university and work, and then it just kind of took off from there. I was a member of a very good active member in the Parents Club at Bel Nor Elementary School. We were looking for people to run for the school board. And no one on the school board had children at the time, children in the district, and so we as a parents club, we said that's just awful, and we should do something about that. And so, actually being the most vocal one of the group, then you become the person to go and do that. And so I ran for the school board that year. I recall I beat an incumbent, and I spent $150. So when I started the state rep race, boy, I'm telling you, the kind of money that they were talking about, it was very, very strange to me.
It was the Normandy School Board,
Normandy
by the way.
School Board, yes. I served there for 9 years.
And then you won in a special election in 1993?
93 was a special election. The Democrats were having a difficult time with all the special elections, and they had not won one in quite some time. And so all the party and everybody involved coalesced around myself and Dana Murray. She ran also at that same time for a special election in her seat. So we were successful, but I tell you, it was the most amazing thing. These people were talking about polling and raising money and all this kind of stuff, and this was totally new to me. I had no experience in that whatsoever.
And you eventually were elected to the Missouri Senate in 2002. You were the first African American to ever be elected to the Missouri Senate from St. Louis County.
From St. Louis
You're not
County.
the first African American, but you are the first African American from St. Louis County.
That's correct.
Do you ever think about that? Like, man, I went from Minden, Louisiana, to accomplishing this historic feat. And
I didn't. I mean, and running at the time, that never crosses your. Well, it didn't cross my mind because and when someone mentioned it to me, I said, "Oh, that can't be true. That can't be true. This is 2002. That just can't be true." But it was, and actually, as a state representative, I think I was the first woman elected from St. Louis County, first black woman elected from St. Louis County. So there was a couple of firsts there that never really entered
and
my mind.
you ran that Senate race against John Bowman, and I guess you guys are friends now. But were you bitter enemies back then, or something like that?
I've never run a race where we were vindictive and harsh, and we denigrated each other. That never happened in any of my races. And I figured that if I could not convince people to vote for me based on what I had to offer, then it was not worth doing. So we did not have an adversarial relationship. It was tense because we were opponents. But after that, everything was just fine, and he was extremely helpful to me in this county council race.
You've been out of elected politics for a while. What made you get back into, the fray?
Actually, Hazel Erby asked me to do this. It was not on my radar to do that. She was going to continue on until she decided that she wanted to leave, which is exactly what happened. But that was not part of my plan. I was working with the Missouri Housing Development Commission. Loved the job. It was exactly what I needed at this time. Little pressure. And I was doing very well at that, and so she came and asked me to run for this, and I was a little reluctant because she was going to go and do something else. It was thought that she would be the county executive, and then that might open that up. But with that not happening, I never imagined that she would take a job with the Page administration. So when she did, and she came to me and said, "I'm going to do this, but I do want you to run for my seat."
Well, the reason I was a little surprised is I have to imagine working at the MHDC pays you more than $20,000, right?
Yes.
And you have to give up that job to serve in the
I
county
had to give up that job to run.
Yeah.
Not just to serve, but to run.
So I often say, people that serve in the county council are doing a true public service because you get paid $20,000 to have ordinary people yell at you for 2 hours every week. But this is an example where you were actually taking less money to serve, basically.
Oh, absolutely. And it's never been about the money. I mean, you know what the state representative and state senators.
About 36.
Something like that. And it's if you don't have another job. But most of the women did not have additional employment there. So, you just had to make do with what you had, or if you had a spouse that was making money, then you could earn that there. But no, it wasn't about the money. It was actually about Hazel's concern that someone continue on in the many things that she had started and many things that she wanted to accomplish. She's revered in this district, and all I had to say was Hazel Erby is supporting me, and it was a done deal.
You left the State House in 2011, right?
Right.
And then did you work directly for the election board after that?
No, I actually served from January, I think it was, to July in the administration of County Executive Dooley at the time. There was a person in the Board of Elections seat. He was the director at the time, and he needed to work until July, I think, to get all of his benefits or whatever. That's kind of what I was told. So I needed a placeholder, and Mr. Dooley pulled me in as his North County liaison for that shorter period of time.
Because you and Dooley have been close for many, many years. I think when he ran for Congress, you were like, I don't know if you worked on his campaign, but you were like a surrogate against him.
I was a surrogate. Yeah. I was very supportive of him because actually Charlie Dooley, Neil Malloy, Wayne Good, Russell Gunn, those people sort of hatched my St. Louis entry into politics as a state representative. Neil Malloy was in this seat before. And he came to me and said, I really want. I said, I don't know you, Neil. I don't know anything about this. I said, I would go to Jefferson City with all these very, very smart people. I've been a stay-at-home mom for all these years, and what do I have to bring? And he said, well, when you win, he said, probably the IQ of the House would go up by 100 points. And so I said, okay, that's very flattering, but you have lawyers, and my perception of the legislature was just a place with all these academicians, rather. And it wasn't that. It's a citizen legislature. And there were farmers and other teachers and people from all walks of life, which I didn't know that. But he was instrumental in me running for his seat.
So your tenure as Democratic election director, there were a couple of instances that were probably not as smooth as they could be. I live in the 83rd district, and I remember pretty vividly there was that whole situation where I guess Stacey Newman and Susan Carlson was a one-vote margin. It was found out that I guess people in a polling place voted in the wrong election. You had to have a redo election.
We did.
And there was also instances where I guess they had run out of paper. My question is, from serving on the election board, do you think that this is just an unmanageable county just because there are so many different ballots and so many different choices people have just because there are so many cities and so many state reps? Do you think there may have to be like a reimagining of how it's run? Because I mention this because your successor, Eric Fay, has also had a lot of problems at the election board. And as somebody who was there, I'd be interested to hear your take about if maybe it needs to be restructured.
I haven't given that a lot of thought, but what I found was that you really have to get good quality people working there. Not just people who know somebody who gets a job there. You really need people with expertise in the area, either IT or organization or things like that. And there were a few people there, but unfortunately, most of the folks that were there, they were there because their mom, their grandmother, somebody else worked there, and they got a job there. It's a very good paying position. And but when it comes to the level of expertise, I think that leaves a lot to be desired. When we have people who volunteer essentially because they work a whole day, they come in for a little training, and most of them are seniors. We tried very, very hard to get younger people to do this, but that was a commitment they weren't really willing to make. And these people who volunteer essentially work very hard that day. It's tiring. It can be confusing. The classes are long and arduous, and so it's a combination of things that I think that I think we probably need to look at in terms of that, because you can talk to these people, you tell these people, you train these people, and when they go out to the polling locations, it's almost as if everything just goes out of their head. They don't remember much. So
Yeah, now that I live in the 83rd district, I can definitely see why there was a problem there. I live on Bellevue, and if I cross the street, I am in the 87th district. I have no idea what the judges were thinking when they drew those two districts, but they split up a bunch of municipalities, and I really think that they were eating too much candy when they drew those districts.
Well, they probably did, but and maybe if we looked at it as municipal wise, you would have, since we have 90 plus municipalities, but that would be probably just a financial nightmare to do something like that.
Can you explain, because I think a lot of people don't really understand how complicated it is to call and run an election. Can you kind of explain some of the challenges in doing that you think that people might not be, I think most people when they go to vote, they don't really understand what a event this is. Like
it's truly an event, simply because we have a lot of municipalities, and so April, in my estimation, was probably the most difficult election that we have. You have 90 municipalities with the mayors and the alder people on there, and each one of those has to have a different ballot style. So if you lived in the 83rd, I lived in the second or third, my ballot is going to be totally different. So even in the office, we have to make sure that those ballots are labeled and divided or separated accordingly. And so if you do that, and that's done well, then they get out to the people who are actually administering the elections, and they confuse that. And if you're not paying attention, if you really are not paying attention, those kinds of things could happen. So if you have, let's just say the presidential, everybody will have that on their ballot. The vice president, those kinds of things. When you get to the congressional level, then of course you're going to have a different name for the second, the first, and that kind of thing. And when you look at all of that, it's just very, very confusing. But we all have to have the different ballot styles. They're all, if you take paper, the machines have to be programmed, accordingly. And it's just a huge undertaking with as large an election authority as we have.
At a single precinct, how many ballots might you have being distributed?
Well, that depends. You could have 3 or 4 different ballot styles, depending on if it's a taxing district, and that taxing district may take in 2 precincts and not the other 2. So it really is very, very confusing. If you haven't worked there, it's hard, and people are a little less patient when they go and well, I didn't get the right one, and they told me this is what I had to do. Sometimes even the people that are working there are not aware of all the things that go into that. It might be helpful if even you would take the people who are going to work, take them through the process of going to, but then that would be a lot of time that these folks would have to devote to that.
So, not to get too retrospective, but let's talk about your run-in with soon-to-be incarcerated former St. Louis County Executive Steve Stenger. So in 2015, after he came into office, you were basically ousted from your position as Democratic election director. He told Joe Manis and I that he had nothing to do with it, but according to her article, the members of the election board came to you and said, Stenger asked us to do this. Your services are no longer needed. Frankly, and I'm not trying to kick the former county executive when he's down, but he's basically admitted to lying a bunch of times about a lot of different criminal schemes. So what was that like? Because I know that there were a lot of people, especially in the African-American political community, who were really angry you were ousted in the way you were.
They were very, very upset about that, and I remember it vividly. That was after the November election. There were some challenges at that election. We had that's one I think that we ran out of paper, and so after the election, after we got, and by the way, no one was ever denied the right to vote. As a matter of fact, one gentleman wanted to vote by paper, and that there was no paper there. We had to take his individual ballot to him. I believe he was in University City at the time. I said, if this is how he wants to vote, this is how he will vote. So we're going to get that ballot over to him so he can do that. And after that, it was just very contentious with the county executive. I believe that very night, he mentioned on the television that heads needs to roll at the election board. And so that Monday, I guess it was that Monday, I called then Dick Kellett, who was chair of the election commission. I called him and I said, I recognize we had some problems there. I just need to know, is my job in jeopardy? I was very frank with him. I said, if that's something that you have to do, I understand that, but I need to know. And so I can make preparations for that. And he said, absolutely not. We like what you're doing. We like the fact that you're looking at different ways to vote. And we were looking at poll books at that time. And so we really like that. And so lo and behold, in January, he and Ann Plumer took me to lunch at Cousin Hugo's across the street, and he told me that Steve Stenger did not want me in his administration. And I had 2 weeks, I believe, at that time. And he said, and we are going to bring in Eric Fay. And he said, and we want you to help him figure out what's going on here. And I said, thank you very much. And I said, I will be gone at the end of the week.
There was an instance, I don't remember the year, but where people ran out of ballots in a municipal election. And some people were wondering, like, why wasn't he treated the same way you were? And they said, you're African American, he was white. He eventually was suspended for a couple of weeks, and he's still there. And I want to just mention that I like Eric Fay a lot. He's always been very responsive to me, and he does know a lot about elections. But I'm sure you saw that and had your own thoughts about how that went down, given that you were heavily criticized when that happened to
correct.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was your reaction through that, whole thing?
I knew that there was something additional that was going on. Because absolutely he was not treated the same way I was. He did not lose his job because of that. And I remember in that election that there were people that were not able to vote at all in that election. I've never been called before the House of Representatives to explain that. I've never been called before the County Council to explain the actions that took place there. So I thought it was absolutely unfair, but that's politics, and he was the person that was selected by Steve Stenger, so that's probably why he kept his job.
What contact did you have with Steve Stenger before or after you were ousted?
None at all.
He never talked to you?
None at all, no.
Do you think it was because you were so close to Dooley and he just didn't want anything to do with him?
Well, interestingly enough, the position that I had, I was put there by the governor. Mm-hmm. I was not put there by Charlie Dooley. That's I think a lot of people misunderstood that. I was going initially, I was going to work in the Charlie Dooley administration, and the governor came to me and he said, we have some major issues with the election board in St. Louis County. And I had chaired the elections committee in the House, and so I did have some experience in that. And he said, we really need you to go in there and see if you can clean up that place. And I said, well, I was going to work for Charlie Dooley. I was very honest with him, and he said, if at all possible, I would really like for you to go to the St. Louis County Board of Elections. And so they arranged that. But when it came to this position, it seemed that if Stenger made the shots.
What was your general reaction when everything went down with Stenger? He resigned. He pleaded guilty to corruption, especially since part of his campaign in 2014 was calling Charlie Dooley corrupt and having Bob McCullough come in to clean up county government. I think people look back at that in retrospect and just think it's a gigantic joke given what happened. But like, what was your reaction when that all went down?
I was very disappointed because, as I said, I did not run campaigns where I just was negative toward my opponent, and I didn't necessarily think that was a way to approach I remember when he got there, I remember that he and several others were there because Charlie Dooley helped them in their races, in their individual races, not just him, but others as well. And so I guess loyalty is high on my list. And so I just thought that was just an awful thing to do. When he went down, I was not surprised at that, but I was disappointed. I was extremely disappointed that it got to the level that it did. A lot of people have, improprieties of such, but they don't go to that level where it's a pay-to-play scheme. I will tell you this, that when we were looking at our poll books at the Board of Elections, we had selected a vendor, and it was not the vendor that was selected. As a matter of fact, I think the Post-Dispatch did an article on that. We had a contract we had gone through. We had worked about a year to get that contract together, to look at the various poll books that were out there, and that was not the one that they selected, was not the vendor that we had selected. So when he won, they changed that contract and went with another vendor that was almost twice as expensive.
We'll be right back with Councilwoman-elect Rita Days. And we're back with Councilwoman Rita Days. Let's talk about some of the issues that you're going to be confronting when you're sworn in. One of the things that County Executive Page has made a pretty big emphasis on is increasing the county stock of affordable housing. This is something that you definitely are well versed in because you just worked for the Missouri Housing Development Commission. One thing in particular that he's really put himself into is the situation in Wellston. Wellston, I think, had a housing authority that went bankrupt. The Trump administration was going to bulldoze a bunch of units there and give the tenants vouchers to go elsewhere. And from my understanding from talking with County Executive Page needed to sign off on that, and he refused to, and he's trying to figure out a way to save some of the housing stock. I want to hear what your feel on this issue is, because Wellston is in your district, and I think that he's probably going to ask you for your input about how to proceed here.
Well, I'm hoping that he will ask me for my input on that. But I've dealt with that Wellston Housing Authority for over 25 years when I was in the House of Representatives, and it has been a fiasco from day one. The leadership there is not what it should be. There have been challenges all along. The housing stock is in deplorable condition. Some of the seniors there were living with no air conditioning. They had no screens on the doors. And I have visited some of those places, so it's not something that someone else would tell me. They have some nice housing units on the other side of Wellston, but the ones that I believe that we're talking about are the ones that are just absolutely in deplorable situation. Now, when you talk of vouchers, and I'm not an expert on this, but there are tenant-based vouchers, and then there's another kind of voucher that the tenant-based vouchers goes with the person. It's actually they use that voucher to go to other places if they want to do that. But the other kinds of vouchers stays with the property. And that's I'm getting my information from a long time ago, but I want those folks to live in decent houses. I want them to live in apartments that are not overrun with rodents and with vermin. I wanted people to live in a place that I would want to live in. If it's not good enough for me or my people or my family, then I don't think that those people should live there. Now, when it comes to tearing them down, where do they go? And I think it's a long-range conversation that needs to be had. But my litmus test is, if you would not live there and I would not live there, then why should these people be forced to live there? And so that's my take on it right now. But as I said earlier, this is nothing new for the Wellston housing stock there. It's not good. And there are lots of drugs there, and it's just not, in my mind, very safe. And so the Missouri Housing Development Commission, their focus is on safe, quality, affordable housing, and that's what we need to work toward.
Are you concerned if they tore down the whole complex that those people wouldn't be able to find a place to go with a voucher?
I believe that the director of the St. Louis County Housing Authority has made arrangements for that. At least that was what I was told, that these people would not be displaced, that they would not just be out in the street somewhere looking. These are families, and it's time now to go to school. These families were sort of in limbo as to were they going to stay there, and of course the schools around is where they would attend. But I think that I was not concerned with her being in charge of that process. I was not concerned that these people would be on the street. No.
Another issue that I think is going to come up is Councilwoman Lisa Clancy has legislation that would bar landlords in unincorporated parts of St. Louis County from, like, basically not accepting tenants because they use things like Section 8 vouchers, or they're on, like, disability, or they're getting veterans benefits. And that's proven to be pretty controversial. A lot of people who live in unincorporated St. Louis County, particularly from South St. Louis County, have spoken out against that for various reasons. I mean, how much of your district is unincorporated? Isn't it most of it incorporated at this point?
Most of it is incorporated, as I said, the 41 municipalities. So everyone has a piece of that.
So this may not, this is going to affect the 4th district, which is Rochelle Walton Gray's, and probably the 6th district, which is Ernie Tracus.
Probably even more. And if you notice, most of those are more, at least Ernie Tracus district is probably a little more upscale. And then, of course, you have some north that are in very nice areas in Rochelle Walton Gray's district, and it might affect them a little bit more. But I think that's a form of discrimination, of course, and I guess you're penalizing people because they're poor, you're penalizing people because they're veterans, you're penalizing people because they're disabled, and that's just not right.
Another issue that's come up a lot is zoning for the new medical marijuana dispensaries, and I think it's production facilities coming online. There seem to be a number of people very upset about the zoning and how far these facilities should be from schools, churches, similar to kind of restrictions you would see on liquor stores, I think. Do you have any opinion on what you think, what type of restrictions should be around medical marijuana facilities?
Well, I have not looked at that extensively to see where they're even proposing these, but I kind of look at the safe school zones, if you will, having them in places that I don't want them to concentrated in African American areas or concentrated in poor areas, as sometimes a lot of these new ideas seem to want to, they're attracted to areas like that. I remember, I guess I was in the House at the time where they wanted to put a for-profit prison. They wanted to put that in the middle of Wellston. Well, absolutely not. That was not going to go down on my watch, and they moved on someplace else. But it's that same kind of attitude I have. If I need to know, what does it look like? I need to know, the parameters that are around this. What does that mean if it's a facility of growing? I'm just...
It wasn't an issue when you're in the legislature, and this is only going to affect unincorporated again.
Yeah, I'm
Right,
sorry, I meant to
right.
mention.
Yeah, so some of the cities, like, in your district are probably coming up with their own regulations, and you have nothing to really do with that.
And I have nothing to do with that, exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned that because, as soon as I got elected, I had some people calling me, well, we need to do something with this mayor and this, and you have your own city government, you have your own form of government, and so I only come in the unincorporated areas of St. Louis County in the 1st District.
And I think that one of the issues that a lot of 1st District municipalities have dealt with, especially since Ferguson, is like how to handle policing. I know that some municipalities have decided to merge and pool their resources into the North County Police Cooperative. Some have decided to choose St. Louis County. Some have chosen Normandy. Some have their own police departments. And that's not really an issue that you get micromanaged in unless a city comes to the council and wants to partner with St. Louis County.
Correct.
Have you talked with a lot of municipalities, as you were running, about whether there's widespread interest in that happening? Because I've kind of gotten the sense that some cities really liked the county patrolling their streets and some really didn't for various reasons. For example, Ferguson, which I guess is almost entirely in your district,
Correct.
every council person that ran in 2015 did not want St. Louis County taking over, especially after how they handled protests. So I'd be interested to hear your opinion on that, because that could be one instance where you may have to make decisions depending on the situation.
Well, clearly, if they want St. Louis County to come in and their citizens want St. Louis County, a lot of times it's some citizens just say absolutely not, and they're very upset when you come in. They some of them like to have their own, but if you can afford your own, if you can afford good quality police officers, and you can afford to pay them a decent salary where they don't have to work 3 and 4 jobs in order to make that, then that's a decision that I think is well worth looking into. But as you mentioned, in our area, Normandy has taken on, and I believe Normandy is CALEA certified,
Yes.
that they have taken on 3 or 4 municipalities. I think if the citizens want that, then I think they need to move toward that. I don't think that there needs to be this overarching governing body that will come in and say, you need to do this, you need to do that. I think that those citizens there have that. They will be paying the bill for that. And I think that is a decision that should be left up to them.
So we haven't asked you what your agenda is when coming on to the county council. What do you see yourself focusing on? Are there things that you're already thinking about proposing?
Well, I will tell you that probably 3 that I'm thinking of right offhand, and first it's going to be jobs. I'm really, really trying to make sure that the folks in the first district have decent jobs that will pay the rent. Not, you have to have a job, period. But I would like to have some of the higher paying jobs for the citizens of there. I think that that having a good job is a remedy for a lot of ills that we face. You're looking at the crime and things like that. And when people have a job and they're vested in something, they tend to act a little differently when it comes to that they've purchased something with their own money, and then they have pride about that. And so I think jobs are going to probably be a big deal. Working with the various unions on making sure that they have these good paying jobs are offered. I mentioned to one of the I don't even remember who it was, one of the unions, that we need to go into the high schools, and we need to open up the opportunities or let them know what options are. And college is wonderful, but everyone is not going to college. Everyone is not college material, and so. But if there are other jobs that they can get that would they can support their families, then I think that goes a long way in making sure that we have a stable community. You mentioned earlier about the housing, and coming right off from the Missouri Housing Development Commission, I'm really concerned about the stock of affordable housing that we have in our unincorporated areas. That's key. We have a tremendous need. Every facility that we have built or renovated has been at capacity before the doors even open. There's waiting lists of hundreds of people, seniors and families that need affordable housing, and I think that that's something that we really need to work on probably sooner rather than later. And of course, looking at transportation issues, we've had significant challenges with our public transportation situation. We need to make sure that is accessible to people who need it. We need to look at at trying to increase the revenue from that, because I think ridership is down in a lot of ways, and I think that has to do with the safety. I just had a conversation yesterday with the head of Metro,
yeah.
and we talked about that. The ridership is down, and I said the ridership is down simply because of a safety issue. If people do not feel comfortable getting on MetroLink or getting on the bus, then they're not going to use that. But in places like my district, that's a lot of the only transportation mode that they have, and so they have to use that. But we have to work very hard on making sure that that the transportation is accessible. travel, and it's good transportation. Looking at maybe ways that we can increase the ridership on both the bus lines as well as Metrolink. So those are about the three coming right out of the election that I really want to hone in on.
And you said you were a voice major. Do you still sing?
No. I sing to my grandchildren. I really haven't done that in a long, long while. I used to sing in the church choir and things like that. And once I went to the legislature, the practices are during the week, and if you don't practice during the week, you don't sing on Sunday morning. And so I kind of gave that up a little bit. But my children are all musically inclined. They all picked up an instrument, so I'm very proud of that. And but in terms, I do the congregational singing now. Let's put it like that.
Well, to kind of segue into whether the council will be singing in tune with each other. Look what I did there.
Good job, Jason.
Wonderful.
So this is not the first time ever there's been a majority of women on the council, because in 2000, I guess the last time the end of 2010, there was Barbara Fraser, Hazel Erby, Kathleen Burkett, and Colleen Wassinger. This is certainly the first time that the 4 Democrats controlling the council are all women. And I mean, my question is, how cohesive do you think that block is going to be, and how much do you think they'll work together with the Republicans? And I mention this because, not to get into too retrospective again, but the scramble for the nomination pitted basically people that were in favor of you versus kind of the people that are associated with the Walton family political operation, and one of those members is on the council with you. So my question is, have you talked with Rochelle Walton Gray? Are you guys on good terms after the nomination skirmish, and how cohesive do you think the council will be?
Well, I think campaigns create divisive atmosphere, and but I don't see an issue with that at all. I as a matter of fact, Rochelle came to my victory party with Tony Weaver, and but I have been the type of person that can generally work with anyone. I just require absolute honesty and straightforwardness. If there's something that you don't like, just say so. We'll move on. We figure on how we can work together, or we agree to disagree. But even in the legislature, I was very fortunate to work across the aisles and get many things passed that people really are not aware of, because I was able to work with the other side. But at the end of the day, I look at the issues that we are facing are not partisan. I don't look at them as male-female issues. I will say that when we were running, it was mentioned that, oh boy, you all will be controlling a county that is larger than some states. Mm-hmm. Someone had looked it up, and I didn't think about that again.
Yeah, I think it's bigger than North Dakota, South Dakota, Vermont.
So
not sure about Rhode Island though.
Probably Alaska.
Wow, I didn't. I really had not thought of that.
I never thought about that until you just mentioned that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was mentioned to me after at the victory party.
And it was going to be female controlled no matter what, because both of the major party candidates in both races were women.
Were women. That's correct.
So
that's correct.
My final question for you is on the county executive and the relationship that you're hoping to bring, because you're right. I've always thought that partisan affiliation is the most overrated designation in county politics, because Republicans on the council are able to do stuff. They often work with Democrats. They often fight with Democrats. Republicans fight with Republicans. Democrats obviously fight with Democrats. The real gauge and the real division is how the council people align with the county executive. And right now, I'd say most of the council is giving Sam Page a honeymoon period. But my question for you is, when issues start to get more divisive or controversial, what is going to be your posture with the county executive? If there's something that you disagree with them on, are you going to be able to push back against him, and what's going to be your mentality?
Well, hopefully we will be able to work together on the many issues that I have talked about earlier. I believe he's on board with most of that. I don't know how you're not on board with making sure you have good quality, affordable housing. When you look at jobs, this all helps St. Louis County. I don't know how you're not on board with that. And so I don't really foresee a lot of dissension there. Sam was in the House when I was in the Senate. We never really worked together on much of anything, but I do respect him as a person. I'm going to respect him as a leader. He is the leader now, and I'm going to respect that position. And if there are something that is there something that we may not agree upon, I will be very upfront and open with saying that and giving my rationale for doing that, and move forward. So I look forward to working with the entire council. And as you said, I don't know the only one I really know, and that was Rochelle Walton Gray.
So we're going to introduce a new feature that Julie came up with that we're going to end every show with. And we want you to provide one or two things that are in your district to suggest to people to see. It could be a restaurant, it could be a landmark, it could be a school.
Or a library.
A library. So I'm going to ask you, I know that there are a lot of things in your district, and I know this is a dicey question because I don't want you to offend other municipalities, but if there were one or two things that people could go to in your district, what would they be?
The first one I'm going to say is the 24/1 theater that we have. It's a wonderful theater. It's right on Page. They have first-run movies, and I just that's where I take my grandchildren, and that's where I go when there's a movie. They just had The Lion King. I didn't see it because I was in the campaign mode. But I do.
Good.
Oh, but I do want to see
might be
that.
out.
Oh, yeah, I hope so. But it may not be at 24/1, and that's where I want to go. I'm thinking of. We have a wonderful school in Pine Lawn. It's called the Barack Obama Elementary School. That would be a wonderful thing for people to just come by and visit. It's relatively new, and then we're also going to have a very new early childhood center. It's if you go down Natural Bridge, it's this multicolored building. It looks like they took a bunch of railroad cars and painted them and put it together. But it's a very, very bright building for early childhood children, and so that's coming online. I don't know if that'll be online for the opening of school right now, but it's a wonderful building, and of course the what happens at our Two Hill at on the campus of University of Missouri St. Louis, a wonderful opera house, if you will, fantastic acoustics. It is a first class building for performing arts, and we love it. We need to have more people to come so that they can enjoy that. But just right off the top of my head, those are the first three that I would be thinking about.
Those are great suggestions. I'm new, so I want to ask people selfishly like what I should see in their districts.
And it elicits great responses like that. Well done, Julie, on coming up with that idea. Well, Senator, I'll be calling you Councilwoman soon. Thank you so much for coming on our show today. We'll be having you back in the years ahead. For all of our stories, stlpublicradio.org. Follow me on Twitter at @JRosenbaum. Follow Julie on Twitter at
JS O'Donoghue.
And I believe your Twitter account is Rita Days 1. Is that correct? I think.
Currently.
Yeah, it should be.
There was someone that gave me a Twitter handle, and then the staff that I was working with decided to change that. So I'm going to work on changing that.
It should be Rita on Twitter.
I
believe that was Lisa Clancy's suggestion, which I thought was a great one.
Okay.
So
I thought it was yours.
Actually, I think it was, but I think Councilwoman Clancy's adjustment was like adding H's to everything because there's Rita on Twitter or something like that.
All right.
I'll let her take responsibility for that because she's my councilwoman, and I don't want her to pass a bill banning me from living in my house.
Oh, wonderful.
Until next time, so long.
And if